There is a moment that happens in the Sertão of northeastern Brazil that you will not find documented in any agricultural manual or nutritional science textbook, because the people who developed it did not have access to agricultural manuals or nutritional science textbooks. They had something more reliable than either of those things. They had generations of direct, unmediated experience with a landscape that offers almost nothing easily and everything eventually, if you know how to ask for it in the right way. The moment happens like this. A man walks into a field of cacti, dense, spine-covered, impenetrable to any casual approach, carrying a tool and a fire. He is not lost. He is not desperate in the way that desperation is usually understood, the way it looks from outside a situation like this. He knows exactly what he is doing and exactly why he is doing it and exactly what the result will be. He has watched his father do this. His father watched his grandfather. The knowledge of what this cactus contains, what it can provide, and how to get at it without destroying either the plant or himself is as specific and as practiced as any skilled trade anywhere in the world. He lights the fire. He begins. And what he is doing in the specific and unhurried way that he is doing it is feeding his family and keeping his animals alive in a place where nothing about those outcomes is guaranteed. The cacti of the Sertão are not a single thing. They are a family of adaptations. Dozens of species, each with its own specific characteristics, its own relationship to water and soil, and the rhythms of a climate that can deliver 18 months of rain in 3 weeks, and then nothing for 2 years. The two that matter most for this story are the xique-xique and the palmatório, and they matter because they represent two different solutions to the same problem, two different answers to the question of how a plant survives in a place where water is intermittent and sun is constant, and the soil is shallow, and the rain, when it comes, does not stay. Understanding what these plants are, what they contain, and why they became central to the nutritional survival strategy of the Sertão requires starting with what the Sertão actually demands of anything that tries to live in it. The Sertão is technically classified as a semi-arid region, which means that it receives rainfall between 300 and 800 millimeters per year, depending on the specific location, compared to the roughly 1,000 millimeters that is generally considered the threshold of adequate agricultural production. But the classification semi-arid does not capture what actually defines the Sertão's relationship with water, because the problem is not simply the amount of rain. The problem is the unpredictability. The rain can come in concentrated, violent bursts that flood a landscape too dry and hard to absorb it, the water running off across cracked earth and disappearing into rivers that fill briefly and then recede. Or the rain can simply not come at all, for a season, for a year, for 2 years. The droughts that recur across the history of the Sertão, the secas that have shaped the region's culture and literature and memory as profoundly as any political event, are not anomalies. They are the defining condition. And everything that survives in the Sertão, plant and animal and human, survives because it has developed some relationship with scarcity that allows it to function when scarcity becomes absolute. The xique-xique's answer to scarcity is storage. It is a columnar cactus that grows in dense clusters, sometimes covering large areas of the Sertão landscape, and stands that look from a distance like a low gray-green forest of spines. The individual segments of the xique-xique are cylindrical, typically somewhere between the size of a large sausage and a small melon, covered on all surfaces with clusters of white spines that are long and sharp enough to penetrate skin without significant pressure. The interior of the xique-xique segment is not the dry, fibrous material that many people associate with cacti. It is a mucilaginous pulp, dense, wet, with a water content that remains significant even during extended drought, because the plant's entire surface is designed to minimize water loss, while its interior is designed to store water against exactly the conditions that prevail when rain does not come. During drought, when the landscape around it is brown and desiccated and the soil has contracted away from the roots of less adapted plants, the xique-xique stands essentially unchanged. The water it stored during the last rain is still there, locked inside the spiny exterior, available to anything that can get through the spines. The palmatório is a different kind of cactus. What is called in botanical terms a platyopuntia, a flat-padded cactus related to the prickly pear that is familiar to people in many parts of the world. though the palmatoria has its own specific characteristics that distinguish it from its relatives. It grows in rounded pads, each pad flat and oval, the surface covered with clusters of fine spines and glochids. The tiny, hair-like spines that are in some ways more difficult to deal with than the larger spines of the xique-xique because they detach on contact and embed themselves in skin and mucous membranes in ways that are irritating and difficult to remove. The palmatoria can reach heights of several meters under good conditions, its pads stacking on each other in the characteristic punchiform that produces a dense, impenetrable mass of vegetation when it grows without management. Like the xique-xique, it retains water through drought with remarkable efficiency. Unlike the xique-xique, it produces fruit. The tuna, a small, often reddish fruit that is edible and nutritious, and that has its own role in the Sertão's food economy, though the fruit is seasonal and the pad itself is available year-round. The use of these cacti as food, for both animals and humans, is not something that was discovered during the worst droughts as a desperate last resort. It was part of the Sertão's food system before the Portuguese arrived, before the colonial economy imposed cattle ranching as the region's primary productive activity, before the sequence of droughts and recoveries that shaped the modern Sertão began to accumulate into historical memory. The indigenous populations of the region had relationships with the cacti of the Sertão that were nutritional, medicinal, and practical. They used cactus pulp as a water source, cactus fruit as food, cactus spines as tools, and cactus fiber in ways that the European settlers who arrived later observed and, in many cases, learned from, though they rarely acknowledged the source of the knowledge explicitly. What the colonial period added to this existing knowledge base was scale. The need to keep large numbers of cattle alive through droughts that would otherwise have destroyed the ranching economy entirely. And the specific techniques that emerged from the combination of indigenous knowledge and the demands of colonial cattle production, the preparation of xique-xique for consumption, by animals primarily, but by humans as well during the worst periods, requires solving the problem of the spines before anything else is possible. The spines of the xique-xique are not decorative. They are the plant's primary defense against the browsers and grazers that would otherwise consume it, and they are effective enough that an unprepared animal that attempts to eat the cactus directly will injure its mouth badly enough to be unable to eat anything else for days. The solution developed in the Sertão is fire. Specifically, a controlled burning of the cactus surface that is hot enough to destroy the spines without cooking the interior pulp to the point of destroying its moisture content and nutritional value. The technique involves using a torch, traditionally made from dried vegetation, though modern practice often uses gas torches, to pass rapidly over the surface of the cactus, burning the spines away while leaving the pulp beneath essentially intact. The skill involved in this burning is not trivial. A burn that is too brief leaves enough spine material intact to cause injury. A burn that is too intense cooks the outer layer of pulp and reduces the moisture content of the interior, wasting the very resource the preparation is designed to access. The correct burn, the one that removes the spines completely while preserving the pulp, requires a specific speed and distance and duration that is learned through practice rather than instruction, the kind of embodied knowledge that lives in the hands and eyes rather than in any verbal description of what to do. Men who grew up in the Sertão and learned cactus burning from their fathers can do it quickly and correctly in a way that someone attempting it for the first time, even with detailed instructions, will not immediately replicate. The knowledge is real, it is specific, and it takes time to acquire. Once the xique-xique has been burned, the segments are cut open and the interior pulp is accessible. For cattle, the prepared cactus is chopped or crushed and fed directly. The animals, once they have learned that the prepared cactus is safe. And this learning process itself takes some time, as animals that have been injured by unprepared cactus are initially reluctant to approach even the prepared form, will consume it readily. The water content of the xique-xique pulp provides significant hydration, and the carbohydrates in the pulp provide energy. The nutritional profile of xique-xique is not comprehensive. It is high in water and carbohydrates, lower in protein and fat than what cattle need for full productivity. But in a drought situation where the alternative is no food at all, a diet of prepared xique-xique can keep cattle alive and functional for weeks, which is the relevant measure of success. For human consumption, the xique-xique pulp can be eaten directly or processed further. The raw pulp has a mucilaginous texture that many people find difficult to consume in quantity, and the flavor is mild to the point of being nearly neutral, which makes it useful as a base for combination with other available ingredients rather than as a standalone food. During drought, when other ingredients are scarce, the combination might be as simple as xique-xique pulp mixed with a small amount of dried cassava flour. The farina, that is the constant of northeastern Brazilian cooking in any condition, producing a paste that is not appetizing in any conventional sense, but that provides the carbohydrates and fluid needed to sustain a person through another day. When conditions allow for more preparation, the xique-xique pulp can be cooked, which changes its texture and makes it more palatable, and combined with whatever protein source is available. Dried meat, if any, remains. Small game, if any, has been caught, to produce something closer to an actual meal. The palmatória's preparation shares the spine removal challenge with the xique-xique, but has a different character because the flat pads present a different surface geometry than the cylindrical segments of the xique-xique. The glochids of the palmatória are particularly problematic because their small size makes them difficult to see, and their barbed structure means they embed deeply in skin and are hard to remove. The burning technique used for the palmatória is similar in principle to that used for the xique-xique, but requires attention to the flat pad surface in a way that the cylindrical xique-xique does not. The burning must reach all parts of the pad surface, including the edges where glochids are often concentrated. The prepared palmatória pad is then peeled, the outer layer of skin removed to expose the interior, which is denser and more fibrous than the xique-xique interior, but still contains significant moisture. The palmatória pad, once prepared, has been used in the Sertão in ways that go beyond simple, direct consumption. The pad can be sliced and dried, producing a preserved form that extends the period over which a single harvested plant can be used. It can be cooked in ways that soften its fibrous texture sufficiently to make it palatable, and it has been incorporated into the regional cooking of the Sertão in preparations that combine it with beans, dried meat, and other available ingredients to produce dishes that, in their final form, do not obviously announce their cactus origins. This incorporation into actual cooking, as opposed to emergency consumption, is significant because it represents the normalization of cactus as food, its transition from drought survival mechanism to ingredient in the ordinary culinary vocabulary of the region. The nutritional content of both cacti has been analyzed by Brazilian researchers interested in the food security applications of native Sertão plants, and the findings have been more interesting than the plant's humble origins might suggest. The xique-xique contains significant quantities of calcium, which is important in a regional diet that has historically been low in dairy products. It contains mucilaginous compounds that have prebiotic properties. They support digestive health in ways that are relevant when the rest of the diet is nutritionally limited. The moisture content, while the most immediately obvious nutritional contribution, is not the only one. The palmatória pad contains dietary fiber, vitamin C, and a range of minerals including magnesium and potassium. The fiber content is particularly significant in the context of a drought diet, because the other foods available during drought periods tend to be low in fiber in ways that have their own physiological consequences over extended periods. The cattle feeding application of prepared cactus has attracted significant attention from agricultural researchers and food security specialists working in the semi-arid regions of northeastern Brazil, because the practice represents a sustainable low-cost solution to drought period livestock management that uses a resource that grows without irrigation or cultivation, and that, properly managed, can be harvested repeatedly from the same plants over many drought periods. Research has confirmed what the people of the Sertão already knew from practice: that cattle-fed prepared cactus during drought periods maintain body weight and productive capacity at levels substantially higher than cattle without cactus supplementation, and that the moisture provided by the cactus can significantly reduce or eliminate the need for water from other sources during the most severe periods of drought. The practical implication of these findings is that a farmer with access to a sufficient stand of xique-xique or palmatória and the knowledge and equipment to prepare it has a meaningful buffer against drought loss that a farmer without that resource does not. The scale at which cactus preparation happens during major drought periods in the Sertão is something that is difficult to convey through description alone. During the severe droughts of the 20th century, and the region has experienced multiple significant droughts in the past 100 years, each one testing the survival systems of the people who live there. The burning and chopping of cactus became a daily activity across large areas of the Sertão, a sound and smell that defined the drought period as distinctly as the cracked earth and empty sky. Families who owned significant stands of cactus on their land made decisions about when to begin harvesting and at what rate that were as strategically important as any other resource management decision they made. Too early, and they might exhaust the available cactus before the rains came. Too late, and they might lose animals that could have been saved. The management of cactus as a drought resource was a skill that operated at the level of the family economy, with consequences that extended across the entire structure of a family's productive capacity. The knowledge of cactus preparation is not uniform across the Sertão. Different regions have developed somewhat different techniques, reflecting local variations in which cactus species are most prevalent, what tools are available, and what the specific preparation challenges of the local varieties are. In some areas, the burning technique is supplemented by mechanical spine removal using specialized equipment that has been developed in recent decades. Machines that can process large quantities of cactus more quickly than manual burning, making the large-scale feeding of cattle herds more practical during extended droughts. These mechanical approaches have spread through the Sertão as access to equipment has improved, but they exist alongside the traditional burning techniques rather than replacing them because the equipment is not always available and not always appropriate for the conditions, and the underlying knowledge of what to do with the prepared cactus. How much to feed, how to combine it with other available feed, how to manage the transition of animals onto a cactus-heavy diet remains as relevant as it ever was. The human consumption of prepared cactus in the Sertão is not something that people in the region discuss with the same matter-of-fact openness with which they discuss other aspects of regional food culture. There is a layer of social complexity around it that reflects the association of cactus eating with extreme poverty and extreme drought. With the worst moments, the periods of greatest vulnerability, that families work to put behind them rather than commemorate. The pride that the Sertão's people rightly have in their resilience and their knowledge coexists with the memory of what it costs to need that knowledge in the first place. Talking about having eaten cactus pulp during a drought is, in some contexts, like talking about having eaten something that you ate because you had nothing else, and the social weight of that memory is different from the weight of talking about regional food traditions that are celebrated rather than survived. And yet the knowledge persists. It persists in the hands of older men and women who learned cactus preparation before there were gas torches and mechanical processors, who can do it with a hand torch and a machete with a speed and efficiency that comes from decades of practice. It persists in the agricultural knowledge of families who manage their land with attention to the cactus, stands on it as one of the primary resources available to them in drought conditions. It persists in the research of Brazilian scientists who have recognized that the cactus knowledge of the Sertão represents a genuinely valuable food security technology. Not primitive, not desperate, but sophisticated, tested, and effective in ways that conventional agricultural approaches are not when the rain stops coming and the conventional options disappear one by one. Man walking into the cactus field with his torch is not doing something that the rest of the world has overlooked because it is not worth noticing. He is doing something that the rest of the world has overlooked because it happens in a place that the rest of the world does not look at carefully enough. What he is doing is applying a solution that works. That has worked. That has been proven by the most rigorous testing possible, which is the testing of actual survival in actual conditions over many generations, to a problem that is not going away. The Sertão will have more droughts. The cacti will still be there. The knowledge of what to do with them will still be there in the hands of the people who carry it, ready to be applied again the next time the sky goes empty and the ground goes hard and the question of what to eat becomes the only question that matters.